We're live.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to call the regular city commission meeting of Tuesday, January 17th, 2023 to order and ask all of you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call. Mayor Pro Tem Jenks.
Present.
Commissioner Rozelle.
Present.
Commissioner Olsman.
Present.
Commissioner Elder is excused. Mayor Paul present. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the consent agenda?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Communications. We have one communication that we need to accept the resignation from Ben Falick from the Environmental Sustainability Committee.
So move
With thanks
with
for
regret.
his time served.
So move with regret.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let's see, any elected officials. Okay, moving on to public participation. Now is an opportunity for the public to address the commission for an item that is not on the agenda. If you have a comment, please come forward to the podium. Seeing none, public participation is closed. We'll move on to the regular items of business. And we're going to start with a presentation of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Report. And we have Michelle Cantor joining us via Zoom to make that presentation.
Can you hear me? Michelle? No?
She's muted.
She's muted or I'm muted? I think you're muted. Okay, I can't hear you.
F4. Control F4. There we go.
Oh, yay!
Good.
It's like the Verizon commercial. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, Deb.
Happy New
Michelle.
Year, everyone. I'm sorry I can't be there virtually, but Chris was flexible enough since I'm actually on vacation to accommodate this, given the timing and the short notice. So thank you for being flexible. I really appreciate it. All right, I'm not going to share slides. You all have the information in front of me. Since it was hard to hear kicking off, is everybody ready for me just to dive right in?
We are.
Okay, wonderful. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try not to spend a ton of time talking. You have the packet there. But I wanna just kind of run through sort of the approach, right, the methodology, why that methodology, and then just really highlight about 5 key findings. And then, obviously, if there's questions, things like that, we will open it up and I will answer those questions. So the first is, you can see on that initial page when I kind of provide the overview, we started with this process of leading, and those of you very well, the commissioners, may remember that we did a DEI visioning session, and that was really for 2 very important purposes. The first, to ensure that all of you as Board of Commissioners were well positioned to understand and represent the work, right? And began kicking off that work as leadership. The other was throughout the assessment process, I was incorporating your feedback to help formulate that phase, right? So the feedback you gave, your inputs were really important in helping to drive that next phase. Of course, using my expertise, and I worked with Jade Strategies in terms of their expertise for focus groups, but it's really important in terms of scope and formulating questions. So that feedback helped determine what demographics we focused on in the focus groups, the questions and discussions in those groups, as well as the questions for the community-wide survey. So that leads then to the second step of the process, which is the assess, right? Really getting to what do Huntington Woods residents want in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and where do they think we are in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And my methodology, as in many resources and experts, is always to get that information from multiple channels, right? Number one, so that you can try and access as many residents, constituents as possible. Number two, creating different ways of presenting, giving people providing their feedback. Some people are very comfortable doing it and letting whoever's collecting know who they are. Others really aren't. They want to remain anonymous. They want to provide their input and not have folks know who they are. They want to feel safe that way. So we did basically the Planet Survey, which was a survey that asked a series of questions, and that was distributed two ways, again, to give people as much access as possible. It was distributed online, right? And then it was also paper copies were at multiple city locations. They were at City Hall and they were at the library for people to be able to fill them out. I want to step back for a minute and just remind everyone that we were in COVID when all of this began. And so that was another reason too, in terms of providing literally physically safe environments for people to provide their feedback. So those focus groups were provided on Zoom, except the last focus group, when we did it with the seniors, we were at a point where the weather was warm and it was safe to do it outdoors. And so we did that one outdoors. And then the third way of collecting information was doing some one-on-one discussions. There were some individuals who wanted to participate in the focus groups but could not because of logistics, because of various reasons, and so offered that as another avenue for people to provide their input. So one thing in terms of this methodology to keep in mind, and you'll see in here, there's a lot of information, right? What I am always looking for is consistency and patterns. And there's also two key ways I'm gathering data when I do that. One is sort of what we call the statistical data, right? The surveys that's giving you percentages and numerical data. And the other is what is called experiential data. And that data is so important, right, in understanding the context, why people are answering what they are, what their experiences and interactions have been. So that's another really important reason for the methodology is you need both those aspects of data in order to really get a clear and accurate assessment and to really be able to identify patterns and consistencies. So once that is done, it ends up becoming what you are all looking at, right? Is looking at compiling all that data, looking at the consistencies, and creating something that gives you the key findings and then really breaks it down, right, into the different areas and categories and what those recommendations are. So let me move into the key findings. And again, I'm going to keep these intentionally very high level, kind of key messages. And then, of course, we'll open it up to any questions. So I've got 5 really key findings that I want to focus on. The first is why DEI. Any organization that I work with, it is so important to understand why they're doing the work that they're doing, right? And so I began that with all of you commissioners, right? Why DEI for the city of Huntington Woods? And then took those answers you gave and used them in the survey, as well as provided some other options based on my expertise in working with multiple organizations and cities. So what came, though, was pretty consistent, kind of 4 key why diversity, equity, and inclusion is important for Huntington Woods. These are not in order, but I'm going to read them and tell you what they are. One was creating an inclusive environment for every resident. Another was attracting new residents. Another is modeling the community's moral responsibility. And the other is preparing children to effectively appreciate and navigate an increasingly diverse world. Why is YDEI important? Because especially, and we talked about this when we were in our very first meeting, right? This phase isn't and shouldn't be the end of the diversity, equity, and inclusion work. On the contrary, right? It's a very important stake in the ground of building that foundation. Moving forward, as you work to begin to figure out where do you lean in, these whys are so important in helping to figure out where you lean in. The other second finding that I want to talk about is there was a consistent misconception, and I want to note that this misconception was not just all white people. This was something that varied across all race and ethnicities, was that many residents think that racial ethnic diversity and socioeconomic diversity are codependent, right? So there were lots of comments about we want to increase ethnic and racial diversity, and because of that, we have to provide low-income housing. Those two are not dependent upon each other. And as we dug deeper and spoke in focus groups, it'd be very, very clear that they don't, not only are they not, but for the city of Huntington Woods, they don't necessarily need to be. There were many examples of people talking about how they know, they're related, they're friends with people of varying racial diversity and ethnic diversity. They have the means and the income to live in Huntington Woods, but they're choosing not to. Right? So you can have racial and ethnic diversity and not focus on low-income diversity at the same time. Those two, not to say that low-income diversity might not be important, but they can be and should be independent of each other. The other thing, the third key finding that I want to talk about, and this isn't, it may sound obvious, but this isn't obvious. All surveys don't come out like this. The residents of Huntington Woods want diversity. It was over and over again in the survey, anywhere from 70 to 85% wanting all aspects, different aspects of diversity. The focus groups, unanimous. So this is a really strong point in terms of continuing your DEI work and knowing that your residents are asking for it. What I think is also really important just to point out with this is a couple things. First of all, people said majority said they want diversity. Majority also ranked that they think other Huntington Woods residents want diversity less than they do, right? So there's this perception that I want it more than the other residents want it. So I think that's a really interesting dynamic, and in terms of getting people to understand that that others want it as much as they do is really important and will be really helpful in creating momentum moving forward. And the other thing is when you looked at the priorities of which aspects of diversity were most important to residents, race and ethnicity were the highest, came out as the highest, and income level came as the lowest. So again, that's why it's important too to remember that these two are not dependent upon each other. They can function separately. Okay, number 4 is focusing on the equity and inclusion aspect. And I'm going to stay general in this. I think the report highlights it very clearly in all aspects of the city potentially and its residents, right? That there is definitely room for improvement here, right? That there are definitely groups of people who feel like they are treated differently by the city and or by the community. The biggest pain points in terms of diversity for this are, again, race, ethnicity, and income level. I will say there are some areas in terms of disability and religion and age that had some messaging clearly, but not quite. And so I would recommend maybe looking into those a little deeper. but a very consistent messaging in terms of race, ethnicity, and income level. And then number 5 was kind of in a lump sum that whether it was staff that we were talking to, residents, there is a unanimous openness to learning and discussing, right? These topics can be uncomfortable. There's a lot of work to do, but almost everyone has said, we want to have these conversations. We want to learn, and we want to do it with expertise and guidance and structure. But again, this willingness is so incredibly important. So those are the key findings that I thought were really important to highlight tonight and kind of the key takeaways. I'm going to stop talking at this point and really turn it over to all of you for any questions you may have.
Mr. Mayor? A couple of, first of all, thank you. I think I appreciate your work and your efforts on this, and it's very comprehensive and very well done. A couple of areas that are a bit concerning, and I raised this issue when the draft came out, was the education section. I mean, I am definitely an advocate of staying in my own lane, and the school system is governed by its own Board of Education. The school principal by law is an employee of the Board of Education. So some of the things like investigating the school principal, and those types of things, that's really outside of our purview. So I really wouldn't want this commission having as an objective, investigating whether the principal made a statement or didn't make a statement. That really falls under the Board of Education. So I think that I'd like to see maybe that section sort of revisited, possibly. And then the home purchasing process is another one that I struggled with in the draft version, and I see it's evolved a bit, but I still struggle with the fact that folks are going to mostly sell their home to the person who's offering the highest price, and the realtor certainly likely aren't going to do much to object to that transaction at the highest price. So, it's like, what can we control? And a lot of this in here we can, but I feel like this education component and the home buying process are objectives that are difficult for us to control or measure. And so, those are the two areas that give me, of the entire report, those are the two areas that I think we might need to tweak, if you will, Mr. Mayor, or potentially revisit. Because I don't want to get into a territorial dispute with the Board of Education. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, in follow-up to Joe's comment, under this home purchasing process, there's a notation here, actively engage realtors who work with underrepresented populations in the city. Number one, I don't even understand what that really means. And number two, I don't see how the city commission or city government has any right or role in expressing a preference for any particular given realtor or group of realtors. I mean, that's a marketplace-driven matter. And while it is true historically that there have always been realtors, some of whom live in the city, who know every square inch and know every house and are on top of sales before they happen. And I mean, that's their book of business. That's their practice. And far be it from the city to interfere with somebody who has expertise in the city. I mean, some of what's in here is it's highly anecdotal and just outside the scope of anything that city government can actually do. I mean, all the stuff about the comments about hiring, and that's all that is absolutely true. And I think we've tried to do everything we can as a political body to make sure that the city does that, has an open hiring process and so forth. But this business of realtors, I mean, I just don't see how city government has any place or role in that process at all. It's just so far outside the realm of what we've been hired to do here by the residents, not to pick the realtors who can sell houses in the city or buy houses in the city. I saw one comment that says, well, you can't find a house here unless you're connected with the Huntington Woods mafia of realtors. Well, that's a pejorative way to look at it. The flip side of that is you can deal with people who, as I said, know every house, know every square inch, and are best equipped to advise somebody who's looking for a house. But like I said, there's an awful lot of very broad, general stuff in here that, I personally just, sort of like, where's the beef? I'm looking for something a little bit more concrete. I certainly think that, it's interesting to see what people say, but for my job here, I'm not sure what I've received here that would help govern any decisions we would make. So, thank you.
Thank you.
At the Anti-Racism Committee meeting this week, the Board of Realtors had a presentation to the committee. And basically, one of the suggestions they made was to make Huntington Woods more known to the general community and especially to the minority community. One of the responsibilities I would expect that we have, just having heard this presentation, if the residents want diversity at 70 to 80%, we might try different ways to make that happen. There are 1 out of 5 residents in southeast Michigan, 1 million out of 5 million, are African American. And to then see that we have 25 in Huntington Woods, on some of the other findings that were just told to us by Michelle, I think we do have some responsibility. And we might also want to hear from the chair of the Anti-Racism Committee who's here. We made those appointments.
Mr. Mayor. Again, just to reiterate, on things like land use and hiring practices and purchasing policies, I think that those are all measurable things that this board is responsible for by charter, by law, and I am all about a lot of, what the recommendations are in here in relation to, what is in our sandbox, if you will. But I think a couple of areas in here I would like to see tweaked a bit, and maybe brought back at our next meeting, for final adoption, and subject to what feedback, folks in the audience have and you have, Mr. Mayor, but those are just my general thoughts.
Specifically, you're talking about the home purchasing process and the education, those two categories.
Can I ask a question, or is it time for that or no?
Sure, we'll open this up to public participation at this point, so please come forward.
Hi, everyone. As Commissioner Jenks alluded to, I'm Katie Beaulieu. I'm the chair of the Anti-Racism Advisory Committee. And I guess I mostly have a question. So the report, and I've talked to Ms. Cantor before, is about, it's addressed to the city of Huntington Woods. So does that mean it is only for city leadership? I really read this report as a community responsibility. And as a volunteer, even though I'm acting in some way as a committee capacity, I want to read this and I view this report from the lens of a community member that wants to take ownership. So while sure it isn't the city leadership's responsibility to maybe challenge certain parts of leadership and education or look at the practices that our peers are doing as it relates to the housing market, I think that members of the community can certainly be a part of that. And so while I understand the points, I would hate for that data to be removed from the record, knowing that all of the data in there matters and is important and valuable, even if it's not in the lane of the city management. So I guess back to my question would be, who is this report for? And maybe that was part of the visioning conversation in the beginning.
I think as city leaders, it is our responsibility to accept a report and then from there, figure out how to start implementing the recommendations that are in here. And as Commissioner Rozelle said, there are expectations and goals that we're setting in this report, so we want to make sure that they are legitimate. Certainly, our first intention is to ask the Anti-Racism Committee to study this report and help us to involve the community as a whole in it, yes. However, there are some questions there on these, particularly these two categories that I think can be addressed. I don't think anyone up here wants them eliminated. I think what we're talking about is what is our role in these two processes and defining that a little better than what it's defined
Right.
here.
Perhaps it lives in appendices or something like that, where that data is still found. Because I know there are a lot of citizens that gave feedback that don't have a platform, or maybe, as Michelle mentioned, may not be as comfortable publicly sharing some things, but still contributed to that study and that report.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Jenks wanted to say something.
That's all right. We'll finish public participation first.
He always does. Go ahead.
Thank you. Carrie McGee, I'm also on the Anti-Racism Committee. And I just want to, first of all, applaud the city for, having this goal and hiring consultants to do this study. I think that's really outstanding and very important. And thanks, Michelle, for the work that you've done. I had a couple of questions as kind of a follow-up to the comments made by Commissioner Olsman and Commissioner Rozelle about the housing issue. And so one thing I wanted to ask Michelle, since this is her wheelhouse, right? She's an expert on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And obviously, you've done these types of studies, Michelle, I would imagine, in other communities, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so I have a couple questions. One was you said at the beginning of your presentation, you said minorities are choosing not to live in Huntington Woods. And I thought that was an interesting thing to say, choosing not to live here. And I wanted you to first of all, first question, explain what you mean by that, choosing. And second,
Great question. So choosing in terms of economically, right? They have an economic choice because a lot of when there were discussions, this pattern was a sense that people want racial and ethnic diverse residents, constituents may want to live here, but there's an economic barrier. And so the point is, well, there are racially and ethnically diverse constituents, populations that are not living in Huntington Woods, and they can economically afford it. So they're choosing, right? They can choose to kind of live anywhere economically, and this is not what they are choosing. They're potentially choosing Troy or Bloomfield Hills or areas where there's a relatively high economic barrier, so to speak, and that there's a much higher minority population in those cities.
and did you do any kind of an analysis as to why that is, why there's a minority population that clearly has economic capacity to live in a city like Huntington Woods, but they're choosing to live in Troy or somewhere else?
No, the recommendation is really to find out why. I think in terms of this is where I don't think we have enough information yet to put a cause. It may have some to do with inclusion, belonging. It may have to do with, because the numbers are so low, they don't want to be somewhere where there isn't a lot of diversity. But I definitely think it is something that is important to find out.
Okay, yeah, and I would agree with that. You also say on page 11 of your report, again, dealing with home purchases, you say in your bullet point on action that should be taken. You say that further discussion and collaboration with residents, potential residents, realtors, and anti-racism advisory committee, and the DEI consultant is needed to determine how a more equitable and inclusion home buying process can be supported and instituted. So you're obviously saying that there are some mechanisms that can to put in place, although there may be some limitations as to what the city can do in terms of requiring certain things. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, what you're envisioning there?
So some of that might be related, right, to who you engage as realtors. Some of it may be educating. The data that we have shows that the majority of home buyers are buying homes word of mouth, right? Maybe there's ways to pivot that mindset or to get actual residents themselves, right, to be more open to using different or diverse mechanisms to get more diversity. So some of it may be educating residents, and some of it may be, educating realtors who already are entrenched in Huntington Woods, right? Maybe they themselves having a broader outreach or a different way of reaching to communities.
Right. And so while there may be some limitations, certainly education can change behavior, right? And that's something we can,
Potentially, yes.
yeah, we can provide
I think that's the
education,
goal,
right?
Right, and it's much harder to change any behavior, right, without education, and it's always a wonderful first start, right? Residents might not even, we know individually we may be doing things word of mouth, right? But
Right.
we may not see the collective impact it's having. And when you have so many residents who are saying, we want more diversity, okay, residents, here's one way maybe we can help, right? Here's a potential lever for improving that.
Right, well, that's great, that's really helpful. And I also note that there's a lot of communities who do take some proactive measures regarding certain ordinances and so forth that do further, advance diversity within the community. And I was just wondering, based on the comments made by the city commissioners, whether there's been any specific research in terms of what types of powers you do have in terms of making changes that might result in ordinances and so forth that might result in a better and more diverse community.
Mr. Mayor?
Has there been any research done on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, let me just go back to my education comment, where under key outcomes, the key outcome is rumored that Burton principal vowed to never let that happen in reference to becoming a school of choice. I would rather the key outcome be that Berkeley School District or Burton School becomes a school of choice district, right? And then the recommended next step is investigate the principal. I would rather maybe that read, engage the school superintendent or board of education, because under the law, that's who's responsible for that avenue, and engage them and have them, engaged in that process and looking into school of choice. So I want to be clear, I'm not saying strike this stuff out. I'm saying that the way it's written, I'm well aware that this is not within our purview, but engaging other elected leaders on the school board is how I would prefer that be written. And then let them deal with it.
Right.
I'd
I'd appreciate that, but what, I wasn't asking about the education. I asked you a specific question about the housing issues.
Oh, I thought you were saying what research was done in general on
No.
okay. So I
Really, it was very
misunderstood.
specific to housing.
Oh,
because
I understand.
there was a representation made that there's limitations that we have, we can't do much. And I was just wondering whether you all actually did any research in terms of some power you may have in terms of passing certain ordinances that do result in a more diverse community.
Let me ask you, hold on, let me ask you a question, Carrie. I mean, Ms. McGee is a very talented civil rights
You
lawyer.
can call me Carrie.
You're a very talented civil rights lawyer. So you tell me how a political body, a city commission, can order or command, if you will, by way of ordinance or policy, for example, what realtors, you want to see the constitutional lawsuit that would be brought, based, I mean, where do we come off to tell a resident, if you want an incoming resident, if you want to buy a house in Huntington Woods, you should use this person, or how do we even get involved in that whole mix? I
Any
mean, that's,
possibility you're gonna run afoul of either a federal statute like the
Commerce-
Federal Fair Housing Act, or else equal protection clause,
Yeah,
or
okay.
anything else,
So I don't think I'm attacking it or asking
No, I
questions
know,
in that regard.
But you
But this
can't-
is a-
when you ask about, can you do some kind of ordinance or regulation that would put restrictions on how people do things or set a policy on how they have to do things, anybody that's on the outside of that has all kinds of potential constitutional challenges to that.
Well, and so the answer to your question is that I'm researching it.
Okay.
Okay? My question to you is, have you done any research?
on
Do you know
that,
the answer to that question? Because I think that there are communities like Ann Arbor and some other communities who've been creative. And I'm not talking about doing something that's going to lead to you being, sued. I understand that. But I'm just wondering, and it's just an honest question, because I'm doing research right now on it to find out and to see if there's some creative ways to do things. And so the answer I'm getting here is that you haven't done any real specific research on
not
that. And that's-
specific to
That's
that,
but
but I mean, there,
I've certainly dealt with these type of issues throughout my career. So I understand Ann Arbor is always very creative in coming up with a lot of things that they do, but,
The Board of,
short of you giving me some specifics about what you're thinking about,
but
what I'm saying.
Carrie, let me just say this in follow-up to that. When this whole, all these issues came to the forefront during COVID after the George Floyd killing and all these, all of a sudden, everything became, rose to the top for the purpose of discussion. So what I found out was I did 2 forums for the library on Zoom. One had to do first with restrictive covenants, because there were a lot of anecdotal comments made about the city of Huntington Woods, allowed these restrictive covenants, and the city of Huntington Woods allowed, and, I mean, it was the mortgage industry, the banking industry, I mean, the city itself, wasn't in a position at all to be involved in it, and, I mean, I brought in a speaker, a woman from Boston who had done a very extensive study when she was a law student at U of M. She did a whole presentation on Zoom for the city, I mean, because there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff in here that's anecdotal. And it's interesting. I mean, I've lived here a long time, like you have, and, I mean, the city is perceived as, very forward-thinking, progressive, you want to call it liberal thinking. I mean, based on some of the comments in here, one of the things that I thought was interesting was the people who said it's very unwelcoming to people who have conservative views. They don't like Republicans, things like that. I didn't know Republicans were considered a protected minority or something like that, I didn't quite get those comments. I'm talking to our facilitator, Michelle, as well. How that fits into this is beyond me. But I'm just saying that I'm looking at this in my capacity as a city commissioner, plus also as an attorney, in terms of, what's real, what's likely to be real, and what's like a perception. And I come back to the question I've been asking about this right from the very beginning when this whole committee started. I said, what exactly are we asking this committee to do? What are we asking of you? What is your mission here? And it's ultimately, you say to me, have you done any research? Well, no, we haven't.
I have.
Okay, but Carol has, right?
Okay, and including, because this has been such an important issue for the city. I was on the government law section of the State Bar. I just resigned from it, but I've been on there since the 80s, and this was a big issue. So when we designed our summer conference last year in conjunction with the Michigan Association of Municipal Attorneys, we geared it around this issue. And we brought in national speakers and had a couple days on this. And so the point was to look at all of it, see what we could do, things like that. So I have been investigating this. I've also been looking for some kind of DEI ordinance, and I actually found one recently that I pulled, and I'm looking at it because I'm trying to decide whether or not that I advise the city we do something like this. But the bottom line is, when you look at them, there are a lot of words that don't really do anything, okay? Because I think the fear is once you start actually trying to put in some kind of restrictions or regulations, you start crossing that line. So, yeah, we really have, I've been taking this seriously. I know they have, and I've spent a lot of time on it. So I just, I'm always looking out for the potential liability for the city. Because
Sure.
I certainly don't want to go down that line, and I'm continuing to look at it too.
Right.
And I would love to see anything
Well,
that you might come up with.
Yeah, well, and I'm going to see what I can come up with, and I'm not saying maybe that's not the
Right.
avenue.
Yeah.
Maybe the avenue is
That's why you-
education.
That's
You asked to
right.
be
That's-
appointed to
that's
the committee.
Probably the better way, yeah.
Well, you asked to be appointed to the committee.
Exactly.
We appointed you.
Oh, no, hey, look, I'm trying to get some
No, I know,
information.
I know.
I don't want to do what's already been done.
I know.
And so this is one avenue, look into the law. Education, I think, is key, and I think that Michelle has got it right, nail on the head. People in this community are saying they want a more diverse community. Well, part of the problem is the pocket listings and the fact that people are not learning about opportunities to buy a house here. And another problem is that you don't market this neighborhood. And why don't you market this neighborhood? It's not a lot of marketing associated with this neighborhood. Okay?
Well, and there also was presentation last week
Right.
from the Greater Metropolitan Association of Realtors, where they said many of the realtors don't know anything about Huntington Woods. And that, I didn't
Talk,
interrupt
I
you.
know, but whose fault is that?
What the realtors are willing to do is work with the city and possibly Michelle to educate a larger number of realtors so they know about the city and can also sell. And I mean, some of the realtors I've talked to locally said very frequently, black buyers want to deal with black realtors. Now, if they don't know about our market and our assets, you're asking, how do you do it? It does not have to be done legally with ordinances. It can be also done with education. That was the presentation
Right.
that occurred last week. The city manager was there, so also heard it. There are lots of ways without writing questionable laws where you open up a market. One of the ways you open it up is you educate the sellers and you create a bigger group of sellers. Now, I do agree with the commissioner about the comment that is in here, which makes an allegation as to what the principal said. I would appreciate very much if that was removed. That's an allegation against a specific individual. It is said 2 or 3 times in the report. I would like that removed. I think it's inappropriate.
Okay, well, that's a different subject, so I'm going to
Yes.
sit down, but I thank you for your time. But we are going to educate. We take our mission very seriously, and so
Well,
that's something we do plan to do.
that's fine. Thanks.
And from what I'm hearing, almost everyone is talking about the same thing when it comes to the home purchasing process specifically. One of the recommendations is to engage realtors, and maybe that needs to be tweaked to some sort of education, both to residents and realtors. Be a little, rather than just engaging realtors, because that's not the business that the city is in. Can we be in education of both groups? Yes.
And it's possible, because it seems to be that the two issues are the ones causing the most angst, that they be separated out into a different portion that, says we did the investigation, these are the things we've learned, these are outside,
Recommendation.
the city commission really can't do anything about that, but here is the ways that, these issues could be addressed, just to make it so it doesn't appear that they've thrown this, okay, now you need to do something about this, when we can't really, or we can do minimal things. Just breaking it down differently and revising some of the language.
Do any of you see the value of goals and timetables?
I mean, are you referring to timetables in terms of like adoption or
No,
timetables in
I
terms of
mean,
each item?
we would like to see an increase to X as it relates maybe to staff in the city. We would like to see an increase to X, which can be very, very small, as to residents, minority residents. There are about 10,000 different ways of achieving that. But at least if we have a goal, then we can go back and check. Unfortunately, your detail with accuracy for minorities using census or anything else is like about every 5 to 10 years, where you get a decent measurement. Or we'll just talk. I would prefer that. I'm not talking in this report, but I'm saying somewhere within the year, maybe we set some goals.
I'm very dubious about our ability legally to do that, to suggest percentages of residents who boy, I'll tell you, that's so far from what I see our job to be here. But I mean, it's fine that a committee is evaluating various circumstances, and I applaud that. And whatever education issues go on, like with realtors, I mean, with all due respect, the realtors I know are always out bird dogging opportunities to either sell a house for somebody or buy a house for somebody. And if a realtor wants to know about Huntington Woods, it's pretty simple for them to get in their car and drive around. You don't even need to do that. You can go on Google, you can do anything you want, and see what the average price is and stuff like that. But I just, like I said, we're talking about concepts here. And all I'm saying is, we don't work in concepts, we work in policies and ordinances. That's what we work in. That's our authority. And we're legislators. And I just would be very careful about the city government wading into things that we just have no business trying to assert authority in. But again, for the purpose of the discussion here tonight about this report and so forth, it's all worth hearing, and it's worth letting this committee obviously continue their work and to make recommendations. But I just personally tread very cautiously on what we can and can't do. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I agree, but I would say some of the items in here are definitely measurable, and I don't have an objection to establishing some type of timeline for items that are specific, like policies, branding, those types of things, where those are in our purview, they are measurable, they're things that we could, check off a list. Yes, we've updated policies. Yes, we've worked on branding. Yes, we've done these various things. I don't have a problem putting together a timeline over a course of, a specific amount of time to look at some of these items. Some of these, though, as my colleague has mentioned, are conceptual, and they're not things that we can necessarily put in a timeline. But some of the items we can, and I think that that's a fine and fair idea to consider. I think probably not now, but as a side to this, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
And it's certainly something that we can ask the Anti-Racism Committee to develop.
Prioritize.
Well, prioritize, develop, yeah, correct.
Michelle dropped off the Zoom, so we've just been trying to figure out how to get her back on. So she hasn't gotten to hear a lot of it, so I'm just trying to help
Okay.
Is there any other public comment?
her. I had one more if you don't mind.
Sure.
I kind of just wanted to talk a little bit about your comment about anecdotal. I've heard you say that a lot, and I fully agree with you of reframing things. I think that makes a lot of sense, reframing. But anecdotal is what makes this report so powerful. And when I hear anecdotal, I almost hear it dismissively of this information is not important because it was one or two people. And I just wanted to make sure that wasn't the case.
That's not what I mean. When I say anecdotal, I mean observations or perceptions that people will For example, there were a number of comments about the Jewish community and certain things like that. And I mean, these are just, sort of, when I say anecdotal, I mean, a lot of it is anecdotal. It's based on comment. You ask somebody, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Well, it's my opinion. It's my opinion. What's it based on? What's my opinion? That's all I mean. What I mean is, for example, I come back to that comment I made a minute ago about that, program we did about the restrictive covenants. You cannot sell this house to a person who's black, who's Jewish, who were all, and how could the city have allowed, they were in virtually every deed on every house everywhere. When I lived in the city of Detroit till I was 23 years old, and there was a deed restriction that said you couldn't sell the house to anybody who was African American. But at that time, they didn't use the word African American. I mean, it was even more blunt. And what this pointed out was how that evolved over time in the country with the fair housing laws, and how it took time to beat it out of the historic fabric of the country. That's all. I mean, there's all kinds of books about systemic racism and things like that in the country over this, the whole history of the country. And we're seeing it now with all the changes to removing anything with respect to Native Americans and all the changes that have been made. What the people that don't like it call woke, I guess. But on the other hand, can certainly see why it's happening. So when I say anecdotal, that's what I mean. I mean, based on, personal observations about things without hardcore data or specific examples to bet, and in particular, what Commissioner Jenks said about the comment by a person, the principal. Mm-hmm. Now that happens to be somebody I've known for decades. And I find that, and it doesn't say she said, it says is rumored to have said. Now, I think you and I can agree that's pretty weak to put in a report saying is rumored to have said, because that's like hearsay on top of hearsay on top of hearsay. And plus, as I said, having known this person, and this person taught both of my children, and I've known this person, it is so far from the concept of reality that to me anyway.
Your reality.
No, personal knowledge, I mean.
Your perception.
Well, personal knowledge of the person and the way she has governed herself over the decades. I mean, I don't consider that just perception. I've watched this person. I mean, I find it inconceivable. But like I said, to use the statement in a report like that is rumored to have been, I find that a little bit, not offensive, but I don't know what the word, I wouldn't give it a statement made like that, not like I specifically heard this person say. That's one thing. Rumored to have said, what does that mean?
Thank you.
Can I speak at this point?
Yeah.
I'm back.
I think if I could just have one more comment, Michelle, real quick, I think I would just like to make it clear that data can be perception. And that's what makes this report so meaningful. You said not hardcore data, and sure, maybe you define hardcore data as numbers, but what makes this report and this feedback so meaningful is it's not just about numbers. Perception is data.
Does empirical,
qualitative, lived experiences, those are all types of data that I hear you dismissing, and so that's what I'm just trying to get a better
I'm
understanding.
saying a lot of it seems to be, okay, I get what you're saying, I think you get what I'm saying, I'm not dismissive of it, I'm just saying that you're giving it to me to look at and say, what do you think about that? And I'm like, I'm looking for something a little more that I can get my hands around, if you will, in terms of proving the point that's being asserted, that's all.
Thank you. Sorry, Michelle.
No, that's okay. I appreciate it. And I'm jumping in here with having lost Zoom, so I have not been able to hear all the conversation. And so first of all, thank you for all the input and the feedback. I do want to comment on a couple things. First of all, I think that there is a difference. And if there are times where I was very intentional about talking about when the focus groups are talking about things and they're providing their experience and their interactions, That is not anecdotal data, okay? That is their experience, and that is their reality. And so I want us to be very clear on that. It is really important that those experiences and their testimonies are not dismissed, okay? Those are their realities. Could there be responses to those, explanation to those? Potentially, that is why this is a starting point, okay? But that context and those are experiences are lived every day, are lived by people who are your residents. And so I would argue, you cannot dismiss those. Where there are things that it could not be considered whether it is factual or not, as for example, comments in the surveys, those are put in there if those were consistent patterns. But you will see those are not necessarily things I have pulled into key findings. Are they things that might need to be looked at and need more research? Yes, potentially, right? And so those things are called out differently within the report. This, in terms of the principle, I understand that could be inflammatory. I use the word rumored because it was something that was coming not directly from a person like you say, but that it is something so important to look into that I thought it should not be left out. And I think all of us are well positioned enough within our positions in society and within the government or with our employees to be able to decipher that is saying it is rumored, but it needs to be investigated. If that needs to be reworded or whatever, that's fine. But I want to make sure a statement like that does not enable dismissing all the other facts of data and experience that are in this report.
Mr. Mayor? Yeah, we may have lost you in the Zoom, and I think the committee chair and I are agreeing that it's just some of this needs to be reframed. The individual responses that are contained in here, I'm not in any way saying that those need to be altered or removed. I'm saying that some of these just need to be reframed using different language, like you said. The objective and the recommended next step, we get to where we want to be. I think it just needs to be reframed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the clarification. Appreciate it.
Okay. Any other public comment before we close public participation? We have a couple specific issues here, I think, as it relates to education and housing, that I think there's some consensus on the commission here that we need to rework.
Okay.
Can we task you with potentially working with Michelle to work on those two categories?
Yes, I think I gathered the input from the commission, and we'll work about getting this brought back maybe for a formal acceptance and inclusion into the city's documents.
Is there any other
understand this commission's input.
comments from the commission?
Yeah, on the housing issue, could you perhaps include some of the presentation that was done last week by the Realtors, their constructive suggestions?
Well, it wasn't part of this report, but I mean, that can be part of an ongoing marketing and/or, some kind of a community impact thing we do. But I don't know that I've included in the report because this was done a year later. But I think it's an initiative that the committee has taken on, and it's probably a good initiative, and that could be part of the follow-up to this. I think would be appropriate. And thank you for being there at that meeting, and your comments at that meeting too were helpful. Thank you.
So I just have a question. So what's the protocol now? I mean, what is the plan to do with this DEI report?
We will have some revisions made based upon the input from Commission and I, the input from the public. I'll work with Michelle to make a couple of revisions, and then we'll bring it back for formal adoption by the commission.
At the next meeting?
That'll be the plan unless something gets delayed, but it won't. We'll do it next meeting. So,
I'm comfortable tabling it till the next meeting. It's a date certain, and we'll take care of it then. I'm willing to make that motion, Mr. Mayor, that we table the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Report until the Commission's next regularly scheduled meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Deb is up next. We have a presentation regarding the library.
And now for something completely different. I want to give you just a couple highlights from our children's programs, adult programs, and the Woods Gallery. I just can't say enough about she's been working since September, but our new children's or youth services employee, Shannon Rourke. She is a resident of Huntington Woods, which has just been fantastic. She knew about the Burtonberry program, and she has about 10 kids who come over from Burton every day after school to read some of those books. She started a STEAM program in October, and I think she had maybe 10 kids. And it has been growing, and her February program she put on our website on Monday, I think, and by Tuesday, that would be today, must have been last week. Saturday, and then by today it is filled and there's a waiting list. So she's just been fantastic. She also has, she did a practice SAT. She is a, what do you call those people who, proctor for tests. Anyway, she did a practice SAT program for teens, and reaching to a broader group of youth was one of the goals of hiring a full-time youth services person. And so this is one of the things that she's done. She's still just one person. She's going to focus more on the younger kids, but we are able now to add a few teen programs to our mix. In adult services, we are beginning to add spine labels, the little white stickers on the bottom of fiction books that tell you the author's name, making it infinitely easier to put them away and to find them when you want a book. We have about 18,000 books. We've done about 100, something like that. I think we are just starting the bees, but I'm very excited about that. I think that'll be a really nice improvement for the public and for the staff. Pre-COVID, the library had an adult art program once a month on Saturdays, and it was very, very popular. It was led by a much-loved person whose name I have forgotten, and that person passed away, and so the program, of course, stopped, and then there was COVID. So we've tried a couple of different things over the summer, something last spring, hasn't really caught on. Our adult services librarian connected with the College for Creative Studies in Detroit, and she got one of their students to come and start leading programs in October. And again, that program in October, I think she had 4 people, and this last one, last Saturday, I think she had 12. That's about as many as we can fit comfortably, and maybe 15 that we could fit and have people have room to work. So I'm really excited about that and happy to be able to provide that to adults in our community. In February, we will have, this is some things that we're trying to do for DEI, we will have Detroit's first ever official historian, Detroit historian, Jamon Jordan. He will be talking about Detroit's Black Bottom and Paradise Valley neighborhoods that were thriving and successful in, I think, the 30s and 40s, and then when the Chrysler Freeway was built right down the middle of it, it kind of destroyed it. Anyway, he will be coming in February to speak at the library. Also with the Library Advisory Board, this summer we remodeled our room rental policy. We have 3 rooms downstairs, and we made the decision to offer with some public input, we made the decision to offer the middle room. It's just kind of a conference room, holds maybe 10 or 12 people. It's not one of our big rooms, but we've made the decision to offer that room for free for 3-hour sessions. And we didn't really make a big show of it. We weren't, sure how much we would get deluged with people wanting it. And so word has just kind of spread slowly. And at this point, that room is used every single day, often multiple times a day. So I'm just really proud to be able to offer that, again, to the community at no cost for some of these, sometimes people just come in and need a place to have a Zoom job interview or something, So it's a really nice thing that we can offer people. Let's see. Oh, we also got another shipment of free COVID tests. And I bring that up because for some reason, it seems odd to me, they are really popular and they go really fast. And when the first shipment came last spring, it just showed up out of the blue. I had no idea it was coming and didn't hear anything else about it since then. This time, the state has reached out to the libraries, so I signed up for this delivery, and I believe that I can keep signing up. So I believe that this is something that the library can continue to offer for free through the state, so no cost to the city, no cost to the library, free COVID tests. We are also working on a survey, a community survey, to ask about changing our hours. I would like us to be able to be open 7 days a week, but without increasing our costs too much, if at all. So we're looking at some different options there. We also just want to get feedback on how people use the library and or how they would like to use the library, what kinds of services and products they would like us to offer in the future. So look for that probably in the next, I'd love to get it out before the middle of February. So we're hoping to do that. Last, the Woods Gallery downstairs, our art gallery. Every artist reception, I believe, has 30 to 40 people at it, which has been just really fun. There's a core group of people who come, plus different people who know the artist. And every single show that Joanne Callio, she's the Woods Gallery coordinator, every single show that she has procured has sold multiple pieces of art. And the library gets 30% of all sales. So that has been actually a nice revenue source for the library. And that is all I have. Any questions?
First of all, thanks so much for coming and updating
Oh,
us.
sure.
Anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I measure the success of the librarian based on the community feedback. Generally, when I hear from the residents, it's not good, but I haven't heard a peep, so you're doing a good job. So
Glad to
that's a
hear
good
it.
thing.
Maybe
Yes.
they're tired of corresponding with you.
Well, that could be that too.
Thank
Maybe
you very
because they don't
much.
hear anything from you.
All right, item number 3 is a matter of considering authorizing city administration to issue an RFP for landscape design and maintenance and mowing for city properties.
So moved.
This has been something that the
Second.
community has been asking for a long time, so.
Second.
Do you want to add anything?
You have a copy of my memo. I think I tried to explain everything there. My analysis for the first year I've been here, I think this is something that's good. I've tried to give you what I think will be the economic impact of this. I think you will spend a little bit more money on this than what you're currently doing. I think it's gonna be money well spent, and I think it'll be well received. Exhibit B was not in, it wasn't quite done yet. I gave you a copy of that tonight. That's the color map that's in front of you. Thanks to Hank, working for a vendor to help us get that map put together. I'm happy to have that just, even if we weren't doing the RFP, that's a good thing to have, and it's a good illustration of 31 properties, 2 of which were reported to me this morning by a resident that I forgot to include, so we got those included, the last 2 medians there. So we're very happy to have that for our future use. And just quickly, thanks to all the city staff that had input on this, DPW, Heidi, Ethan, Hank for all their work and helping put this together and to kind of brainstorm on this. Parks and Rec and Tracy as well. We'll see where this goes. I hope there's interest in this. It's a big job. It's a lot of work, but I think this formulation will do a better job of addressing this and getting the services that we need. So I plan to, at least in the first year, to personally be involved with this, oversee it, eventually pass it along. But I think if we can get a good contractor here the first year of implementation, this will be key. And I look forward to it as much as as much as you look forward to work. I look forward to doing this and moving forward with it. So thank you.
Thank you. Any public comment? Comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I think, as you mentioned, this has been a long time coming. I've heard a lot of complaints from residents. And I think in the past, we've asked our residents to do a lot in terms of volunteering to maintain a lot of these things and, drag garden hoses across town to water a lot of this stuff. So The fact that the maintenance, the design, the plantings, the potential irrigation will now be handled by professionals, I think its time has come. And so I think this is money well spent. I get a lot of complaints, how come our entrances don't look as nice as Pleasant Ridge? You may be there now.
Oh, can't have that.
Right. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4 is approval of the quote from Conti for the purchase, installation, and programming of 2 Jace N4 controllers. These are for the HVAC system at the library.
So move.
Second.
Any public comment? Comments or questions from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5 is consideration of designating Ethan as our single street administrator for the city of Huntington Woods in all transactions with the State Transportation Department.
So move.
Second.
Ethan, I'm assuming you're willing to serve in this role.
Yes, thank you.
We didn't hear him jump ship yet.
Any public comment? Comments or questions from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6 is a matter of authorizing the 2022-2023 budget amendment mid-year. Ethan, do you want to just highlight it?
Yeah, so I have a memo in the packet, and then there was a Excel spreadsheet on the second page that just outlined what the budget amendments will be for this second quarter. This is basically, this first round is just seeing where we're going over. A lot of this is just, costs are higher, utilities is a big one, our current political environment plus inflation, things cost more than were originally budgeted, so we're taking steps to plug those holes. There was also a couple purchases. There was an election drop box purchase that put us a little bit over on election supplies, so we plugged that with City Hall building maintenance. The audit was a little bit more expensive, so we moved money over from professional services. None of this crosses funds. It all stays in the same fund, but it's just moving money around accounts. And then a couple of things with the pool. We had some repairs that threw a couple accounts over budget, as well as the equipment rental account in the sanitation fund. So just a little small stuff now, just moving around to plug some holes. I anticipate, we'll have third quarter in March and then fourth quarter at the end of the fiscal year. Tree trimming will be on there. But I also kind of want to see where the winter goes, because if we continue to have as warm a winter as we have, we'll have more money to, have, that would have been spent on plowing and snow removal, things like that.
So move.
Second.
Any public comment? Comments or questions from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7 is approval, an update of the City of Huntington Woods credit card usage policy. We have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Any public comment?
Maybe we want to have Chris just give a real short
Highlight.
synopsis of this, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was just an update, analysis from the finance, from Ethan's finance director. As we've used credit cards, used them a bit more and more, ordering more things online as opposed to going to our regular in-store brick and mortar accounts. Monitoring who can use these, make sure we have the correct fraud protections in place. Just some housekeeping of the policy that was last done in
2017.
2017. So nothing, no real substantial changes, no significant issues or problems that we're trying to fix here. Just making sure that we're also following it. There's been some changes in GASB accounting regulations. Then again, we're making sure the policy is consistent with those and consistent with what our auditors feel are best practices. So that was it.
public comment? Comments or questions from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8 is a matter of reappointments. I'm actually going to combine 8 and 9 with reappointments and new appointments. And I'm going to start with the committees that the mayor appoints. I would like the commission to appoint to the Planning Commission. First of all, reappoint Blake Moore for his second term, and appoint Sarah Gutierrez to a 3-year term,
So moved.
and also appoint as the commission liaison, a voting member of the Planning Commission, Commissioner Michelle Elder for a 1-year term.
I move we confirm the mayor's appointments.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. For the Library Advisory Board, I would like to appoint, reappoint, no reappointments. I would like to appoint Angie Politis for a 3-year term, and for 1-year terms, 2 student members, Nadia Caesar and Alyssa Brescott.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And for the Historic District Commission, I would like to make an appointment as the commission, a voting member from the City Commission for a 1-year term, Commissioner Joe Rozell, and Michael Wright for a 3-year term.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
To the Arts and Garden Board, recommendation to reappoint Marcy Bycat and Deborah Heck.
Second.
To the Board of,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
to the Board of Review, reappointment of Robert Horowitz and Chuck Chandler.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
To the
Commissioner Rozell.
Ethics, okay.
You know what, you're on a roll, Commissioner Jenks, keep going.
Keep going, all right.
I was just going to do 3 because it looks like we have about 9 or so.
All right.
To the Ethics Board, reappoint Corey Starr and Andrew Franklin.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Communications, sir. Mr. Rozell.
I'll move we reappoint Lauren Willens and Shira Reed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Parks and Recreation, reappoint Suzanne Potter and Kim Tarnapol, and then appoint Mark Filar to a 1-year term expiring in 2023, Ben Black to a 1-year term expiring in 2023, and Sarah McDonald to a 2-year term expiring in 2024.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, and the last one I'll do, Mr. Mayor, Environmental Sustainability Advisory, Penny Phipps to a 3-year term expiring 2025.
Support.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Oh, thank you.
Floor is yours, Commissioner.
Thank you. All right, so for Senior Advisory Committee, I move that we reappoint Greg Gemerich, G-M-E-R-E-K, I hope I didn't say that wrong, and to appoint Shelley Gaft for a
Support.
3-year term.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
For the Anti-Racism Committee, I move that we reappoint Daniel Denna.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
For the ZBA, I move that we reappoint James Park and that we appoint Adam Tong.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I think we got them all. I have a list of that, Heidi. Heidi,
Watch the
I
rebroadcast.
could see her,
all the time.
I could see her hand trembling.
okay. Moving on to the city manager's report.
Thank you. I'll be brief, I promise. Next Wednesday night at 7 o'clock here in these chambers, we're going to have a meeting. We are inviting residents who will be impacted directly by a sewer project this winter. I think as commission's aware, we've been doing a lot of sewer lining throughout the village, primarily through the rear yard.
City.
Say village?
Throughout the city. I didn't know we'd become a village.
I think we were in 1926.
Yeah, you are correct.
Wow. You can take the man out of Beverly Hills, but you can't take Beverly Hills out of the man.
So,
God
my
almighty.
apologies. My apologies, City Commissioner Olsman. So there are a handful of homes that we, in our analysis of the condition of the sewer that were not able to be repaired by sewer lining, they're going to be open cut and repaired. So you're looking at about a 10-foot deep repair of the rear yards of these homes. It's going to be pretty intense. We think we can do it as with as little disruption as possible, but we want to invite these people in to take a look over the process with them. It's about 12 to 15 homes that are going to be impacted by this directly in 2 different locations. So we actually hand-delivered letters to them today to inform them of the meeting Wednesday night. I've invited the mayor, any other commissioners who'd like to attend, please attend that as well.
Is this in the rear yard?
It'll be in the rear yard of their home. So there is going to be, if there's 15, having done this a few times, there's 15 different homes, there's going to be about 23 different restoration plans on how to put all this back. But we're going to work with them on, there's some vegetation that's going to need to be removed. We'll work with them on replacing all that to make sure the residents are satisfied that we get the access that we need, but we put things back in appropriate condition. So we're asking them if they can't be here to send some representative. It'll be a good project. We'll be happy to get it done, but we want to make sure all those who are interested attend. So if you're interested, next Wednesday at 7 o'clock. The Communications Committee, I know Francisco is working on trying to get them, getting that band back together. There's a couple of issues he would like to work on. It's probably best run through them, including some work he would like to talk to them about some of the Friday e-blast communications and thoughts he's had about the logo. I think are probably best run by the Communications Committee. So he's trying to get them back together at a meeting on a regular basis, and I'll keep the commission posted on when that might be. If you notice, the last week, we had some work done on the City Hall roof. We had some repairs planned. We had our contractor come in to look at those repairs, and his analysis of the roof, we found the roof to be in worse condition in a few spots than we realized. We had $115,000 budgeted for our roof repair. We got a little concerned about some of the things that he found, and the total re-roofing was going to be about $40,000. In lieu of having this wait another winter, there were ridges that were completely exposed in a couple places, some vents that were missing. I thought we ran a real risk of doing some damage to the boards underneath, if not even some of the trusses in the building. So for the price that he gave, I authorized it as a repair. It was a third of what we had budgeted, so the money was there for that, and it got done, and it got done well. The weather was cooperative, so if you saw the new roof go on, I didn't mean to cut you out of that. You did approve it in the budget process, but given the condition, we decided to move forward rather than wait on that. So if it was wrong, I apologize after the fact, but we got it fixed. And I think we're happy with the condition of the roof now. At the last meeting, we got the $1,000 award for our voting participation. In the interim, we have fulfilled all the paperwork requirements to join the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. So we used the $1,000 for that. It was exactly $1,000 to join that group, so it's been money, hopefully be money well spent, and hopefully that's a group that we can use going forward, even for some of the issues I believe that we discussed at depth tonight. And lastly, another decision made over the holidays. might have seen there was the cardboard dumpster that was placed behind the library. That was something that was offered to us for free through SACRA. The reason why we only had a 20-yard dumpster is because I didn't think we needed a 30, and I was wrong. So I ended up spending about 30 minutes there one night breaking down boxes because I felt bad about storing mine on top. So broke some down while I was waiting to go pick up my daughter somewhere else. But I think that was worthwhile. Obviously, the residents used it. Next year, we'll either get a bigger one or we'll have it emptied more often. But that was a good resource. Thanks to Tringali and SACRA for providing that. Troy had originally come up with that idea. They put it in 3 or 4 different locations around Troy. So I think the location seemed to work, and residents really took advantage of that. So it helped with waste collection that week as well, which is always one of our heaviest weeks of the year. So to get that off the curb in one location, and I think people will probably have to get it out of their houses too. So thanks to them for doing that, and I think it's something we'll continue going forward with in future years. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the city manager? All right, thank you. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.